Isn't it much harder if the stepmother has the child or children in the home full time with the husband, as Allison does not?
Brian, this research is very interesting that's coming out now that people are finally starting to pay a little more attention to stepmother families. Here's what we've learned. Counterintuitively, the role of the part-time stepmother is perhaps even more stressful than the role of the full-time residential stepmother. Why might that be? Because there's really not the time to work on a relationship full-time. The kids come for alternate holidays, they come for weekends, and that means that these stepmothers aren't really getting the opportunity to work on that relationship consistently. It's happening in bursts. It takes longer. So while it is stressful to live with your stepkids in many cases, the part-time arrangement is not necessarily a whole lot easier.
Fran in Long Island City, you're on WNYC. Fran.
Hi. I'm a widow for more than 30 years, and I have my 4 stepchildren, who were pretty much grown when I acquired them, still keep in touch with me. And I was also a stepchild, that would live with a lived-in stepmother. My father wanted us to call her mom, but we wouldn't do it. And we were really mean to her in the beginning, but we grew to love her because she was a wonderful person.
I love to hear a story like this where an adult stepchild, instead of getting stuck in the old role and remembering from childhood, I love the stories that I heard from adult stepchildren saying, you know what, we were rotten to her. She stuck it out. She was a trooper, and we came to really respect her. And that gives me hope that people say that rather than constantly narrating, you know, things didn't work out and it is all my stepmom's fault. We've got to give these adults credit.
Fran, thanks for calling. You do acknowledge the darker side of step-parenting. You talk about research in your book that finds that children who lived with one genetic parent and one step-parent were much more likely to suffer the most severe forms of child abuse. And even if you control for other factors like poverty rates, abuse is more likely, and lethal abuse is far more likely than with 2 genetic parents. How do you understand these stats?
They're fascinating. You're referring to the work of Margot Wilson and Martin Daly, 2 evolutionary psychologists. They're Canadian, and they did come out with this study, and people really didn't like it. People didn't want to hear that children in step-family situations, they focused on stepfather families, that they were more vulnerable to lethal abuse. Let's be clear. Why did they focus on lethal abuse? Not because step-parents are all killers. 99.9% of us are not. But lethal abuse is the easiest form of, if you will call it, vulnerability to actually document. Other things aren't going to be documented. It's not going to be documented in the criminal record if a stepchild gets less allowance or leaves the house earlier than a biological child might to set up a home on his or her own. Lethal abuse was studied by this team because it's verifiable. And listen, they did control for all these other factors, and it does seem that when these children had a stepfather figure in their lives, they were more vulnerable to lethal abuse. But again, very exceptional, statistically extremely rare.
Wednesday Martin, my guest, author of Stepmonster, a new look at why real stepmothers think, feel, and act the way we do. And Liz in Pelham, you're on WNYC. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
So what'd you call to say, Liz?
I have a very good relationship, I think, with my stepchildren. I've been married for 12 years now. My husband has been out of the house for 15. And it's not necessarily the children. I try to play a very supplemental role, like you were talking about, and just sort of stepping in when my husband calls me the voice of reason.
Great.
When things get out of hand. But it's the ex-wife that hasn't remarried and I think is very jealous of our lifestyle, and we had another child together, who is, I think, constantly throwing in things that taint me, that look like I'm the bad stepmother, that, now we're back in court over things, and it's a real problem going forward after, 16 years.
Right, right.
Wednesday, go ahead.
I hear you, Liz, and I have a lot to say. First of all, you're not alone. Second of all, there's a big, long section in my book called The X Factor, and I hope you will check it out because I think it might bring you a little bit of peace. But, historically, remarriage after a divorce is new, and it does throw in this confounding variable. So what can Liz and her husband do since her husband's ex is refusing to loosen the children's loyalty binds and is, in fact, fueling them and making them worse? Well, Liz's husband can say to his kids, Liz is very important to me, very special. You don't have to love her or feel like she's your mom, but she's here to stay. Liz can loosen those loyalty binds herself, and it sounds like she's already doing a terrific job doing that. And perhaps meditate.
Liz, good luck.